God's grace, God's mercy, God's peace are yours, brothers and sisters. He's given you a sign of assurance that ought to give you peace throughout your life. It's been said that God asks of us the most easy and the most difficult thing at the very same time. He wants us to believe him, to take him at his word, to trust him. Believe him when he says that no matter what you think of your life or see in your life, you are indeed a sinner, corrupt through and through from the moment of your conception without a prayer of pleasing him. Take him at his word when he says that that's the very reason why he gave his son for you, to be the sacrifice that cleanses your sin and removes it from his memory. Trust him. When the storms of existence in this life batter your ship, trust him to work all things for your good, to defend you and care for you and carry you all the way to his side. Just trust him. How easy. The burden of having to prove myself perfect before a perfect and a just God is gone. It's the greatest weight being lifted from the innards of your conscience. The yoke, as Jesus said, is easy, and the burden's light with him. By faith, things are so easy. But how impossibly difficult when everything around you in your life looks as if God has at the very least lost interest in you, and at the very worst is punishing you. Faith is at the same time easy and impossibly difficult. The kind of faith that God asks of you is what we read about in the letter to the Hebrews, where it's being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you do not see. It's not the kind of faith that's illustrated by the physics student who, when his professor asked, "Does anybody know the law of the pendulum?" was all excited in the back row and said, "I know it. The law of the pendulum says that as the pendulum swings away from you, it will always come back shorter than you released it." And the professor asked the student, "Do you believe this?" He said, "Absolutely I would. This is math. This is science. You can see it. There's hard evidence." He said, "Come with me, grab the pendulum." And he brought the 50-pound pendulum back to the top of the classroom and held it in front of his face and released it. And as the pendulum swung to the other side of the room and began to swing back, the student realized, "I don't really believe in the law of the pendulum at all," and he ducked out of the way. Isn't that what our faith often looks like? In the vacuum of a clean life that's free of trouble and free of trials and free of temptations, yes, I believe. But when it's swinging at you with all of its force, how often we duck. King Ahaz had every reason to believe that God was on his side. He was the king of Judah, anointed, set apart by God to lead his people. But he had proved himself to be a faithless man. He promoted the worship of the Baals, set up shrines on every corner, under every spreading tree in the land, the book of Chronicles tells us. He had even sacrificed his son in a fire trying to appease the neighboring gods. But I think we're too quick sometimes to read about things like that and hear about things like that and to look down our noses and criticize someone. You see, he had storms in his life, and they were coming from the north. His family members, the kingdom of Israel, was allying itself with Aram and was threatening to attack and destroy Judah and Jerusalem. He was looking for assurances that, in fact, things were going to be all right, that his kingdom wasn't going to crumble, that he wouldn't be killed. He was turning to all the wrong places, but brothers and sisters, don't we do the same? Don't we look for assurances, signs, things that tell us that things aren't exactly how they seem sometimes? Wives, don't you like to get assurances that your husband loves you? Flowers from time to time, maybe a gift for no reason, right? At the very least, it's nice to hear your husband look you in the eyes and say, "You're still the love of my life. I love you." What if your husband never told you that? Would you think that he loves you, or would you begin to think, maybe he doesn't anymore? Children, when you get yourself in trouble with mom and dad, and not just, an accident that maybe breaks a picture at home, but you break the picture and then you lie to dad. And dad's angry, and maybe he punishes you, and maybe he grounds you, or maybe he takes away your iPad or your phone or whatever he does, and you begin to think that, I wonder if dad's ever not going to be mad at me. I wonder if dad will ever believe a word I say again. Isn't it nice when dad smiles at you and hugs you and says, "Okay, I love you, I'm your dad"? Fathers, husbands, don't you want reassurances that you're going to be able to take care of your wife and your kids? When your physical health wanes, don't you like to be assured that everything's going to be all right, even though you're not feeling like you can do it at the time? When the job is a little tenuous? Aren't you looking for reasons to believe that things are going to be okay? You realize all these things are nothing more than falling under a much larger umbrella that just illustrates how quick all of us are to doubt the promises of God, to love us, to forgive us, and to make sure our life works out for our good, he promises. We look everywhere in our life looking for reasons to believe what God has clearly promised us. And in that way, we're much the same as King Ahaz was. You know how great God is? To someone as faithless as Ahaz, think he sacrificed his son in a fire. Someone as faithless as King Ahaz, God sent a prophet to assure him that he was going to still work his kingship and his kingdom out for good. That in fact, Aram and Israel didn't have a prayer of accomplishing their purpose. And so the prophet Isaiah comes to Ahaz, and we catch up this morning with him in the middle of a doubt that Ahaz even has with the prophet here. And the Lord gives to Ahaz a promise. Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz, ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or in the highest heights. Whatever you can dream of, Ahaz, whatever you think you need so that you can believe me in this time of trouble, ask for it, God says, and I'll give it to you. How gracious God is to Ahaz. Literally, the sky is the limit as to what sign he can ask for. And here Ahaz puffs himself up with a little false humility and false piety. Ahaz said, I will not ask. I will not put the Lord to the test. Isaiah said, hear now, you house of David, is it not enough to try the patience of men? Will you try the patience of my God also? You get the sense that Isaiah had kind of had it up to here with the kings of Judah that he was dealing with, kings who acted the part but really were absolutely faithless men who followed other gods. And still God's graciousness comes through even clearer. Because even though Ahaz was looking for signs amongst all the other false gods and piously trying to reject God's offer of a sign, Isaiah says, forget it, God's given you a sign anyway. It's the greatest sign of all time. It's a sign that even if you ask for stars to collide in the heavens, even if you ask for the deepest seas to dry up, you wouldn't come up with the sign that God came up with. A sign that wasn't accomplished in Ahaz's life, a sign that came along many hundreds of years later, but a sign that stands as the greatest sign to all of God's people about all of God's promises. The Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. I'm not going to preach a Christmas sermon. But I'm going to ask you to come to church on Tuesday and Wednesday. With every reason you have to be fearful the next year of life or the next week of life, every doubt you have about God's ability to work your life out for your eternal good, bring that Tuesday and bring it Wednesday. Every failure that you sense in your flesh that yields too easily to temptation, every time that you've not even put up a fight against the temptations that the devil has thrown in your life, bring that Tuesday and bring it Wednesday. Every assurance that you think that you need, that you know that you need, that God indeed forgives you and loves you, that he's still captaining the ship of your life against every wind, against every wave, against everything that stands in your way. Bring it on Tuesday and bring it on Wednesday. Because God's given you a sign for the ages that every promise he's made is exactly true. That his love for you is deep. That his power in your life is unbreakable. That not even hell or the devil or all of the forces in alliance against you are able to touch you or scratch you with God in your life. And no matter what you think, the sign still stands. The virgin conceived and gave birth to a son. And we call him Emmanuel. God's blessings to you this Christmas season. May God give to you joy and thanksgiving and an unshakable faith, confidence that gives you the peace that transcends all understanding. Amen. Now may that peace of God